What is up, YouTube? Josh from Team Delta V coming at you guys with a top 10 decks of this upcoming format, the November 9th, 2015 format. I included 5 honorable mentions as well, but let's get right into it. Skip all the chit chat. Number 10, I have Blackwings. Blackwings have new support, the Assault Blackwings, which are really powerful. It can abuse Northern to make level 7 Synchros as well as rank 4 XCs very consistently. It has Black Sonic, which is just a mirror force that banishes everything, which is just nuts. Can put very high pressure boards out, or build very high pressure boards. It has access to Beals and Void Ogre Dragon, but it does die to Floodgates. But you know what? You have Delta Crow if you need it. So all in all, this deck I think can do something. I don't know if it will, but I think it can. Number 9, I have Necros. With Unicorn to 1, Brian Act to 1, and Sure It banned, you rely heavily on the Gem Knight engine, the Perform Mages, and the Norden with the instant fusions. But you still have access to cards like Necros of Trishula and Necros of Valkyris, which are both very, very powerful cards with a lot of attack and great effects. And having complete free access to that is nuts. You also have Gishki Vision. I know I didn't put it out right there, like where you can see it. But Gishki Vision is a level 4 Chariot style card. Anytime it's used for a ritual summon of a water monster, it can be used as the entire tribute. I know it doesn't get you that search that you want, but all in all, it's still a powerful card that can be used to replace Chariot, since it is banned. And you know, it's good, and it can be used for rank 4s. So all in all, I'd say the deck still is powerful enough to play, not powerful enough to be the tier 1 deck we knew it as before this list. So yeah, moving on. Number 8, I have Psyframes. Now I know this comes as a shock so far down on the list, but I find that this deck isn't super consistent like it needs to be, despite having the ability to negate anything. It's a very reactive deck. You don't have the ability to be proactive and make huge pushes for damage unless your opponent acts first, in which case you are going to be going second quite often. Whenever you can win the die roll, you want to go second with this deck because you can react to their first turn before they know what you're playing. But if you go first and set a bunch of back row and pass, they know exactly what you're playing, and they're going to play for it, and they can win because of it. So yeah, it can access the Yosenju engine and abuse it pretty well. I would say probably just as good as Yosenju's pure do it, but also have that negation in hand and have traps, which is very strong. It has Zeta, which recycles everything over and over again, and has Omega, which is just one of the best cards in the game, although it is better, in my opinion, in Infernoids. So yeah, it has strong power plays such as Omega and Zeta, and it can control the game pretty well if your opponent doesn't know how to play for it. But if your opponent knows how to play against this deck, you will most likely not win the match. So that is why I have this at 8. Number 7, I have Morels. Getting this new Neptibus card is amazing for this deck. This card is incredibly broken. There's no TK based solely around this and your goons, and all you need is this one card. It allows you to search out your Megalos, use Megalo to attack twice, use this to spam out your Dragoons to the field, make Abyss Dweller, make 101, or make Bahamut Shark to trigger that Dragoon's effect for a third, fourth, and even fifth time sometimes in a single turn. That's a lot. It also has easy OTKs. It can put high pressure boards out if it doesn't OTK. It can abuse Norden better than any other deck in existence. It does die to floodgates like Skill Drain and Vanity's Emptiness. Even Mind Drain can destroy this deck, which is commonly sided in against Psyframes. 4 Psyframes, I should say. So all in all, I think this deck deserved a spot, and at 7, I think that gives it the room to kind of move around. I don't know if this will stay at 7. I do think this will be at least a tier 2 deck when this card comes out, but until then it will not do anything. So all in all, I think at 7 it's fair. Number 6, Monarchs. When this deck drops, the new support that is, it's going to be very, very meta changing. These 2 cards, Aether and Erebus, are very, very strong cards and have loads of attack. You can now normal summon Aether as a disruption play using like a Monarch, so on forth, or just regular normal summon. You can use what is it? I don't remember the trap card that allows you to normal summon your opponent's turn. I'm drawing a blank here. I don't know why. But just normal summon on your opponent's turn using Stormforth and attributing your opponent's monster, all that, it's amazing. Deck is so consistent, it can actually OTK. Monarchs OTKing has never happened before, like, ever. It's so powerful. And the boss monsters, here's the thing about it, all of the monsters are boss monsters, which is really, really good, especially since they can just plop them on the board pretty easily and do so consistently and has so much searchability. There are plays in this deck that I've made in testing that go +9 in a single turn. That's reminiscent of Spellbook of Judgment Power, which is really awesome. All right, next we have number 5, Ying Sings. I know this seems very high up on the list for most people, but I feel that this deck is probably one of the best decks coming into this, having access to Trishula. Baxia is a crazy good card that can shuffle off 3 back row under like anti-magic arrows. You can't respond either. You have Chao Fang, which can lock literally every other deck out of the game. If I make Chao Fang against Psy-Frames, they lose. If I use Chiwen. If I use Pulao, I can destroy Magispectors. Chiwen also helps me destroy Cosmos. There isn't a deck this deck isn't good against. And there isn't a deck that's good against this deck, which is why this deck is so powerful, in my opinion. I think having access to every synchro is ridiculous. Every single main deck monster that is a non-tuner and non-pendulum has the effect of Formula Synchron that can be used even in their battle phase, which means you can Black Rose in their battle phase or main phase 1 or main phase 2, meaning you playing Yang Zing still have access technically, or sort of pseudo access to Exciton Knight, even though it's now banned. That's amazing. And it does all this with floaters, which makes this deck incredibly difficult to OTK. There isn't a single weakness to this deck other than the floaters can miss timing. This deck has access to every floodgate there is. Lose when turn doesn't affect the synchros because they have Bixie. Skill Drain doesn't affect synchros because there's Bixie. This deck is just so powerful. All it loses to is Macrocosmos, D-Fissure, Soul Drain, and Darklaw. So really, there aren't enough cards that hurt it, and it's very easy to play for Darklaw, especially since you probably are main decking 2 or 3 Effect Veilers or 2 or 3 Breakthrough Skills or some form of Effect Nation and Skill Drain. You really don't have to worry about heroes that much. So this deck is very, very powerful, and I think it's going to be a huge contender. Not to mention Creation doesn't miss timing, so it makes up for the weakness of the deck. All in all, I think this deck is going to be a huge contender. I think this deck is going to do really well in just about every tournament you see it at. And I think this has been, since it came out, one of the most underrated decks of all time. Simply because, it can miss timing. Yes, but it doesn't usually. Number 4, I have Infernoids. Okay, I think saying 16-0 at a YCS is quite enough to say why I think this deck is good, but I also have other reasons. Okay, first off, it has super powerful bosses, such as Deviati and Onunchi, which you see right there on the screen. Both of these cards nuke everything, basically. If I make Onunchi, I destroy all monsters on the field except itself. If I make Deviati, I destroy all spells and traps. And if I use Voidseer and make an Onunchi, I use Onunchi and destroy everything you control because I chain my Voidseer and my monsters will stay if they're Infernoids, which is really, really nutty. Okay, then you have Decatron. You can just pitch these 2 cards to the graveyard for free, or any other Infernoid that you want to use the effect of. You could pitch it. You could pitch Sight Samus to make Decatron a level 7, then summon a Tondel, make a level 8, or make Decatron level 8, then summon a Tondel, which is level 8, make a rank 8 Xyz in like Galaxy Eyes Prime Photon Dragon, and plop Galaxy Eyes Full Armor Photon Dragon on top, detach from Full Armor, destroy 1 card on the field of your choice, and attack for 4,000 damage. That is nutty. This card having access to that is this deck having access to that is just so good. It's a very fast-paced deck, and all of its special summons are inherent, which means cards like Vanity's Emptiness must be used during like the standby phase so that Infernoids don't go off. And even then, if I can get my Patrouille out before you have an Emptiness, I can just get rid of your Emptiness, which makes this deck one of the best. The fact that you can tribute your monsters for disruption on your opponent's turn, which A, clears your board for your OTKs next turn, or your big pushes next turn, or just to plop a boss monster out next turn. and banishing cards from your opponent's graveyard as disruption is just really good. This deck has access to infinite copies of DD Crow, essentially, which is really good. And we all know how annoying it is to get DD Crow'd in a deck that relies on the graveyard. This deck does it better than any other deck. So this deck is definitely deserving of its number 4 spot. Number 3, we have Sotelo Knights. Okay, so Sotelo Knights have always been consistent. Rhoda was at 1 when this deck first came out, and it did huge things because of Skybridge then. Rhoda's back to 1, and this deck is basically back to the exact same thing it was when it originally came out, except it now has Triver and Rongo Midian. I think I spelled that right. It still has Alpha at 3. This deck was untouched by really any ban list since it came out. Even though it won Worlds, Konami decided not to touch the deck. They put Rhoda to 1, which does absolutely nothing because they have access to Skybridge. This deck is super consistent. It can control the game so well. It can use Call of the Haunted and Oasis of Dragon Souls to pump out free advantage. It can abuse cards like Triver to just shuffle or just to clear the board and push for 21 easy, or make Triver shuffle everything, then just use my normal summon now on like a Vega or an Altair, get another card and make something else. You could then make like Ouroboros and discard another card from your opponent's hand and push for serious damage. This deck has access to every rank 4 in the game, which is just nutty. Them being warriors means you can go into Heroic Champion Excalibur, Heroic Champion Rongo Midian. You can go into just about any rank 4 that's generic or requires warriors or lights or whatever. Having access to those Bujin cards, Bujin XC Monster Tsukiyomi, as well as cards like Constellar Omega, which can then be used to make Constellar Ptolemy on 7, is just really powerful. So I think this deck definitely deserves its number 3 spot. This deck is a strong contender. Next, we have number 2, Magispectors. This deck is absurd when it comes to getting advantage. It can search its traps, it can search its spells, and it can search its monsters. The monsters can't be targeted or destroyed by an opponent's card effect. It's so powerful, and the boards are so high pressure that most decks can't handle it unless they have cards that don't target and remove the monsters, which is very hard to do. And Darkhole and Raigeki don't do anything to this deck. It's incredible. It's super consistent, has access to the Draco Slayer cards. It's just a very, very good overall deck. The monsters, sure, they don't have the most attack, but that's neither here nor there. They don't need it. The weakness of this deck is just put a 3k beater on board, and it's very difficult for this deck to deal with, especially if that 3k beaters Dark Destroyer. Then we have our honorable mentions. We have Heroes, Burning Abyss, Ritual Beasts, Girgias, and Spellbooks. Now, these are honorable mentions not that I'm saying they'll do nothing this format, simply me saying that they are not quite as consistent as I would like for a deck, in my opinion, in the current meta. Simply because Spellbooks, you need to search your fates, you need to search everything, and it's very fragile. As well as if you don't open good, you lose very quickly in this format. Next, you have Girgias. While I think this deck has untapped potential, I don't think enough people are going to pick it up and play it in this upcoming format for it to be considered very strong. I do think it can win, though. Then Ritual Beasts, Cannahawk to 1 hurts it. Burning Abyss, Seer to 2, and Graph to 1 really hurts. In Heroes, I just don't see people playing very often, and rightfully so. They aren't the best deck because, Cosmos and Necros and all that stuff have always just barely been like, look at me, compared to this deck. And I mean, it's right, so I don't think it needs a spot. Now, number 1, Cosmos. Yes, everybody knew this was going to happen. This deck is fast-paced. It's consistent. It has Dark Destroyer, which is a huge boss that's so easy to get out. It OTKs so easily. It gets free advantage with Town through the roof. It's just, this deck never stops going. It has near infinite resources within its own archetype. You have access to cards like Jurighetto to ensure farm girl searches. And who doesn't like Star Wars? A deck themed after Star Wars is pretty awesome. So, I mean, like, this is a cool deck. The one problem I see with it is the price. But, I mean, most metagame players don't care about the price of a deck. They'll still build it. All in all, that is it for today, you guys. That's it for this video. Don't forget, comment, rate, subscribe. See you guys next time.